Configure security controls and remediate recommendations in Defender for Cloud. Hello, I am Cio Rodriguez. Microsoft Defender for Cloud helps organizations continuously assess and improve the security posture of Azure resources by comparing configuration against defined security standards. At scale, these standards can be configured at the management group level so that multiple subscriptions inherit consistent security requirements. The Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark, or MCSB, serves as a key baseline, while organizations can also apply custom standards when they have additional internal or regulatory requirements. The security process follows continuous cycle. Defender for Cloud evaluates resources through assessments, identifies weaknesses, and generates security recommendations for misconfigurations or risky conditions. Security teams can prioritize these recommendations based on risk, exposure, business importance, and potential impact on secure score. After remediation, Defender for Cloud reassesses the resource to determine whether the security posture has improved. Several remediation options are available. The fix capability provides quick remediation for support recommendations and can often correct multiple affected resources. For larger environments, Azure Policy remediation tasks provide a scalable approach. Policies that use effects such as deploy if not exists or modify can correct existing non-compliant resources and help maintain consistent configurations across subscriptions. Governance rules complement remediation by assigning recommendation owners, establishing due dates, and creating accountability for unresolved security issues. Not every recommendation requires a technical fix. Defender for Cloud supports exceptions for situations where a recommendation is not applicable, the risk is already mitigated, or the organization formally accepts the risk. Exceptions should include business justification and be reviewed periodically. For the SC-500 certification exam, remember the separation of responsibilities. Defender for Cloud identifies the problem. Governance rules assign ownership. Fix or Azure Policy performs remediation, and exemptions document approved exceptions. Management Group Scope provides the centralized governance needed to apply these controls consistently across large Azure environments. In the following demo, we'll put this into context and we'll see how to work hands-on in the Microsoft Defender for Cloud portal to apply some of the stuff that we just discussed. Here we are again at portal.azure.com. Again, you could look for Microsoft Defender here in the search box. In my case, since I have already worked with this, it'll be listed here. So let's click on the Microsoft Defender for cloud. And what we are going to, there's a lot of stuff to Defender for Cloud, and we will work through a lot of these. We're specifically going to be working into the recommendations piece. But when you come here for the first time, first of all, you need to establish the scope. And so if you go to the bottom, actually, you may come to, for the first time and maybe see something like this. It's important to expand so that you have full visibility into all the sections. But we're going to be looking at management, and in management, we're going to click on environment settings. Normally, this is the first thing that you need to do. And you can choose the entire route if you wanted to, or the subscription. I only have one subscription, so let's just stick to the subscription here. And so here we get into the cloud security posture management. We will discuss this more in detail in following videos. But anyway, so there's a lot of stuff that we were going to be covering over here. But what we are concentrated on right here is on the security policies. And so here's a bunch of standards, again, that we're going to be working with, whether it is the Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark, which, by default is the only one that it's on. But if you need to comply with the standards like the NIST 800-171 of the NIST 853 or the CIS controls, etc. There's tons of this standards. They need to be turned on. You need to have the right licensing for that. Here you can see the number of recommendations. So if we're working with the or whether you need to comply with ISO, so again, there's a lot of stuff. But let's say that you need to comply with the NIST 853. Notice that there are 221 recommendations, right? So compliance, and again, you can turn this on over here if you want to work on that and make sure that there may be some cost associated with that. We're not going to be talking about licensing at this point, but assuming that your company needs this, was obviously it's gonna pay for that. But anyway, so that's how you turn that on. But what we are looking at is looking at the security policies, and we just so these are out of the box, but you can create your custom standard if you need to. Right? So put a name, put a description, click on next, and then you will look at the recommendations. Right? These are the recommendations, but all of these are built-in recommendations. Now you can maybe choose more than one, and that kind of stuff. But you can add a filter to search this, by all those stuff, and whatever it is that you choose, click on next, and then you click on create. If you need to create, in many instances, you don't need to create a custom standard. You can use the out of the box standards, right? All of these standards create recommendations, right? So if we go back into the main page and we see all the recommendations over here, all of these recommendations are based on the standards that you have turned on. In this case, you only have the Microsoft Security baseline So that's what you see over there. But if you were to turn on, let's say the ISO 27001 or the NIST 800-53, etc., then you'll see recommendations based on that. And there are four mechanisms that deploy security controls at a scale. Because this is one of the things that we're doing here. How do we control, fix this at a scale? Some recommendations. So let's click on, I don't know, any of these, right? So some recommendations have a fix option, right? And what this means is that you can deploy a security configuration automatically to the selected resource using Defender for Cloud's built-in remediation logic. And there's not much to it because it won't cause any problem, right? So it's called a quick fix. Select the unhealthy resource and click fix to launch the quick fix remediation. Blah, blah. So, and that's easy. And also you get instructions over here on how to do that. There's a lot of information that you get about this specific diagnostic logs in Key Vault should be enabled recommendation. Now, some recommendations are not that easy to fix. They don't have that fix button. So you may have to use a policy remediation task, which trigger a deploy if not exist or modify policy to configure resources that match the policy condition. Or you may have to use a governance rule that assigns ownership and a compliance deadline to the team responsible for a group of resources. And finally, you can use an exception, which is formally document that a resource is excluded from a specific control with a justified reason, whether it is that you are accepting the risk, or maybe you have an alternate control that remediates that, whatever the case may be. But those are basically the four mechanisms that deploy security control: fix, policy remediation task, governance rule, and an exception. And so we can use this fix in bulk. There's some of these that may have, so you can use that to do this, this fix action to deploy security configuration automatically to resources where Defender for Cloud knows the exact configuration changes, and again, so that's easy there. Okay, there's not much to go over this. Now, the policy remediation tasks, which trigger a deploy if not exist at a scale, that's a little bit more involved, if you want to call it. But in this case, so assuming that there is no fix button over here, or we could just go back into one that maybe doesn't have. Okay, so this one doesn't have the fix button. And so here's the instructions on how to do that manually. So you can go ahead and remediate that doing that, right? It's a lot of information on how to do that. A description. Important to notice that if there is an attack path, and we'll talk about this in a comment video, but if there's an attack path, which is really important, you can see that there. You can see the risk factors, the governance, etc. So risk factors are environmental factors of the resource affected by the recommendation, which influence the exploitability and the business impact of the unhealthy security issue. Example for risk factors: internet exposure, sensitive data, lateral movement, etc. So, if it's a highly risk recommendation, then you'll see that here, and then it will show the attack path and all that kinds of stuff. So really interesting stuff. But anyway, so if we open this, and we want to do this at a scale, we can look at the here where it says view the policy definition. And if we click on this, so here we see the policy. And then we can assign this policy, right? Directly from here. So we saw in a previous video how to go to Azure Policy to remedy the Azure Policy. The main goal is to prevent, security attacks by doing stuff before things happen. So, and we can go directly into the policy in the Azure Policy, but we can go to the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, go to recommendations, and then open that policy right from here, and then we can click on assign policy. And then this is going to be similar to what we have already done. If you have not watched my previous videos on this, then do that. But basically, we've already gone through this, how to walk through this assign policy remediation stuff. Okay. Now, when it comes, we also talked about governance rules, and so let me close out of this. We talked about governance rules as well. If we go back to the Defender for Cloud, and again, so this is where you choose where you want to apply those whatever it is, those governance rules. But so here we are again at the Defender for Cloud, and then if you click on the environment settings, this is what we're talking about, the governance rules. So if we click on this, governance rules assign each recommendation a responsible owner and a due date for remediation. These rules ensure that recommendations don't sit unsanctioned for months, and so the owner receives email notifications. The recommendation appears in the My Items dashboard in the Defender for Cloud, and overdue items are escalated. Also important to notice that governance rules operate at the recommendation level, not the resource level. So a single governance rule can cover hundreds of resources across multiple subscriptions if they share the same recommendation. The rule assigns ownership based on conditions. For example, all high severity recommendations on resources in the production resource group are assigned to the platform team with a 14-day remediation deadline. And again, so to come, you come over here and you click on create the first rule, and you need to give it a name, and you need to select a scope. And let's say that we're going to do this at the tenant group. Actually, I cannot choose but here you choose the priority. And basically, what it means is that rules are run in priority order from the highest, which is 1, to the lowest. So let's say that this is, I don't know, whatever, rule 10. You put a description, right? And click on next, right? And then here you can choose by severity, by risk level, by whatever it is that let's say that we want to create a rule based on those two, right? And then here you select the owner or the email address, and then you enter the email address, the remediation time frame, when does this rule need to be remediated, and you get the gist, right? But But this is really, it's one of the key components when talking about remediations and stuff like that. So remediation rules are really, really useful. Anyway, we're not going to go through the whole process, but you get the idea. So going back into the Microsoft Defender, we are back into recommendations. We also talk about creating exceptions, which are formal documentation of excluded controls. So if we choose any of this, you're going to see the exempt the entire recommendation or disable specific findings using disable rules, blah, blah, blah. So if you click on this, again, what this is exemption just remove a resource from the compliance calculation for a specific control without changing the policy or standard for other resources. And the exceptions require documented justification, and they fall into two categories. You got waiver, where the risk is accepted, no compensating control exists, the leadership will sign off on the exemption, so the resource doesn't comply with the control, and the organization acknowledges the risk. And then you have mitigated, which is a compensating control that provides equivalent protection. The resource doesn't comply with the specific control, but the underlying risk is addressed through an alternative mechanism. We talked a little bit about that, right? So again, you choose in the cloud platform. This is because we have this Azure subscription connected. We also have connected resources from Amazon AW web services and Google Cloud. But anyway, so let's say we're working on this. Select the, you need to select the management group that this will apply to, or select the subscription if there is a specific subscription that you want to apply it to, or a resource group, right? And then here are the categories that we talked about, whether it is a mitigated, so resolved through a third-party service, or a waiver. And then here is the date in which this is going to be resolved. You select the recommendation, select the remediation category, blah, 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 and identify the condition. You just fill it out, just follow the instructions. And that's how you create an exemption, which is, again, a formal documentation of excluded controls. After you apply all these remediation tasks, you want to track it, right? And so if we come here to the security posture, to the security score, you see the total security score. So this is something that you want to monitor, and you can view this into the environment and can also honor if there is one. But anyway, so here's the security score. So let's say that the security score is right now 76%. I go and apply high impact remediation tasks, and then now the security score, go up to 80%. Well, that means that things are working, right? So it's important to do that. And then here you come into, we are in the Azure environment, so there are other environments that you could connect, whether it is AWS, GCP, Azure DevOps, GitHub, GitLab, Docker Hub, and JFrog. All of these are environments that you can connect to. But anyway, so yeah, it's important to keep this, to keep track of this. All right. So with that, we conclude this this module. Here you configure Defender for Cloud environment settings that establish a foundation for security governance across Azure subscriptions. We enable auto provision of monitoring aids. So you could basically here, you know, auto provision monitoring agents, connect workloads to a centralized local network workspace, add regulatory and custom security standards, you name it. I mean, through Azure Policy and automation rules and all that stuff, we can do a lot of remediation at a scale. You then saw how you can deploy security controls at a scale using the fixed operations for immediate bulk if the remediation supports that. We also saw the discussed the policy remediation task to trigger automated configuration deployment, governance rules to assign ownership and deadlines. And we also talked about exceptions to document justify exclusions. So really useful skills and knowledge for not only for the SC-500 certification exam, but Azure in general, specifically Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And we're going to get to Microsoft Defender for Cloud more. There's a lot on this certification about Microsoft Defender for Cloud. But anyway, so with that, we conclude this video. Thanks for watching. Remember to like my content if you do like it. Subscribe to my channel to be informed when new videos. I will try to make these videos more often. Been very busy at work and other stuff, but thanks for the comments. A lot of comments about asking for these videos and you know how people find this useful, and this is really important. So if you have a comment, I do not answer all the comments, but I read all of them, and eventually those comments help me improve the content, make it better, and we both win, right? So please subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Make sure that you're there, and share this with friends and family, other people, you know, security minded like that, maybe in the path to, or may just want to know more about this certification. Really appreciate that. Well, thank you, and hope that you continue watching my videos on this journey path to the SC-500 certification exam.